Dear learners, I'm Christina Georgy and I welcome you to my session on the course code MEG-05 titled Literary Criticism and Theory. Understanding the nuances of previous question papers, particularly the one from the recent past, holds significant value as we gear up for our TEE. I'm referring to your term and examinations. These previous papers are readily accessible on our official IGNOU webpage within the student zone. Without much ado, in this session, let's analyze the June 23 question paper of MEG-05, which is indeed a vital resource in preparing for your upcoming term and examination. First and foremost, let's direct our attention to the question pattern. Upon closer examination, you will certainly notice a distinct pattern shift. I'm referring to a change in question pattern. So let's have a quick look at the differences. Firstly, regarding June 2023 question paper. As you can see on screen, the basic instruction was to answer any 5 of the following questions. Dear learners, let me repeat, any 5. For the December 2022 TEE, I suppose you can see this on screen, the instruction was to answer question number 1, that is the short note, and any 4 of the remaining questions. I hope you are able to figure out the difference. That is, question 1 used to be compulsory and the students were asked to choose any 4 from the remaining questions. So that is history now. For the last previous TEE, June 2023 TEE, the basic instruction was to choose any 5. Do you think that's an advantage? Well, when we observe the number of questions for the June 2023 TEE, there are just 7 questions in total. So, you were asked to write 5 out of 7. How many choices? Just 2 extra questions. But for the previous one, that is for the December 2022 TEE, they asked 8 questions in total and students were free to write any 4 provided they attempted question 1. That is 5 out of 8. 3 extra questions. So there used to be 8 questions in total in the past, but if we observe this particular question paper, June 2023 question paper, it's just 7 questions. Another main difference is the word limit mentioned. So if we look at the previous papers, you can't see an approximate word limit mentioned for MEG-05. But in this particular question paper, in case of June 2023 question paper, they have mentioned to answer in approximately 500 words. In a way, students used to be confused regarding the word count and the length of the answer. I suppose this approximate word count answers your questions. Now, as I mentioned, short notes are not mandatory with respect to June 2023 question paper, whereas till the December 2022 TEE, this section used to be compulsory and they were supposed to answer in around 200 words. Dear learners, it is essential to bear in mind that question patterns might undergo changes. Therefore, make sure you are well prepared. Thoroughly read and understand the question paper, as I always say, before you start answering the questions. We've already discussed all these tips and techniques of attempting questions, writing questions in all the previous sessions. Now, let's discuss the questions one by one. Firstly, question number 1. Bring out Plato's criticism of the role of artists in his concept of the ideal state. On the very first reading itself, it is evident that this is a question from classical criticism. With respect to our official IGNOU study material, this question relates to Unit 2 of Block 2, titled Classical Criticism. I repeat, you can find this concept mentioned in your study material as part of Unit 2 of Block 2. As we have studied in our lectures, Plato's ideal state considered artists and their works as impediments or obstacles to the pursuit of philosophical and moral ideals. Plato viewed art as an imitation of an imitation, thus twice removed from reality. I suppose you remember this concept? Yes. Plato believed that art served no useful purpose in society, and therefore he proposed to keep artists away from his ideal state. This criticism of art forms a significant part of Platonic philosophy. You can find the relevant information in your official IGNOU study material for further reference. Make sure that you frame your answers in 500 words as mentioned in the question paper. Moving ahead to the second question, discuss the position of imagination and emotions as opposed to rationality in romantic poetry. Of course, from the very first glance, we understand that this is a question from romantic criticism. Yes, block 3 of our MEG-05 study material. But more than that, don't you think this is a familiar question? See, dear learners, I've always told you to be familiar with the questions that appear towards the end of every unit. If you closely observe Unit 1 of Block 3, you can find this question there. So it's important to be prepared. Alright? So this question relates to Unit 1 of Block 3. As we have studied, romantic poetry emphasized imagination and emotions over Enlightenment era rationality. The Romantics viewed imagination as a creative power transcending the mundane and perceiving the world innovatively. Emotions were seen as authentic sources of insight, leading to profound truths about life and human nature. This emphasis further challenged the rationalist view that reason and logic were primary sources of knowledge. Dear ones, you can find the relevant information in your study material. Remember Unit 1 of Block 3 for further reference. Now, let's look at question 3. Identify some of the important principles of criticism according to I.A. Richards. This question relates to new criticism. Of course, you guessed it right. Particularly, straight question from section 1.5 within Unit 1 of Block 4. I repeat, Block 4, Unit 1, Section 1.5. I've told you this is a very important area. They might ask you for the next exam too. I.A. Richards, as we have studied, is a pioneer in new criticism. He emphasized detailed textual analysis in literary criticism. He proposed a pragmatic and empirical approach focusing on practical application and observation. I suppose you remember me teaching you about his experiment at Cambridge? Yes. Richards rejected subjectivity in criticism, aiming for a more objective framework. He believed that interpretation and evaluation are crucial aspects of criticism. So these principles have significantly influenced literary criticism. You can find the relevant information in your study material. I'm referring to your official study material for future reference. Moving further, question 4. Bring out the Marxian concept of purpose in literature. Dear ones, as we can see a Marxian reference, this would certainly be related to Block 5, Marxist literature. So, as we have studied in Marxist literary criticism, the purpose of literature is deeply rooted in reflecting the socio-economic conditions of its time. In fact, it serves as a significant purpose in unveiling societal truths and advocating for changes towards a more equitable social order. Moreover, this highlights the instrumental role of literature in social transformation. I'm sure that you'll find the relevant information in your study material for further reference. Make sure that you write your answers in 500 words approximately. Moving on to the 5th question. This could be the most familiar question to most of my learners because I've always told you this is an important area. Block 6, Feminism. This particular question is, how does the second sex mark a shift in literary criticism? Discuss. So, as you know, this question relates to Block 6. Which unit? Unit 4 in particular. So, Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex, we have discussed this work in detail. This literary text literally revolutionized literary criticism by introducing a feminist perspective. It indeed challenged patriarchal bias, asserting women's historical relegation to the other or second sex. Beauvoir emphasized that gender is socially and culturally constructed and one becomes a woman rather than being born as one. This work encouraged critics to consider gender and sexual politics in literary texts, paving the way for feminist theories and gender studies in literary criticism. Therefore, it marked a paradigm shift in literary studies and interpretations. So, you can find the relevant information in your study material. Remember, Block 6, Unit 4. As I've always told you, there could be essays from any of those essays mentioned in Unit 6, Feminism. Now, if you look at the next question, question number 6. Evaluate Derrida's concept of deconstruction and his resistance to it. Dear ones, this question relates to Block 7, titled Deconstruction. This is more or less a very straight question. We have studied about Derrida and his concept of deconstruction. Derrida's deconstruction, a critical development in literary criticism, opposes structuralism's assumptions and examines the text-meaning relationship. It uncovers inherent textual contradictions and ambiguities, challenging the notion of fixed meaning. Derrida resisted deconstruction's reduction to a method or a rule set, emphasizing its complexity and depth. He insisted on deconstruction as a thoughtful, nuanced text reading approach. Remember, not a mechanical approach. And this approach profoundly impacted literary criticism, thereby promoting more critical and thoughtful text engagement. Dear ones, you can find the relevant information in your study material. Remember to read Unit 2 of Block 7. Now that's all regarding the essay questions, because the last question of this particular question paper, question number 7, is to write short notes on any two of the following. Dear ones, remember you need not write all 5. Just 2 are required. So you can choose 2 out of 5. Each question carries 10 marks. In a way, we can say that these are short essay questions, even if it's written short notes. Make sure that you write for 10 mark short essays. So if we look at the very first question, it's regarding aujitya. We have studied this aspect in detail as part of block 1. Which unit in particular? Unit 5, Indian aesthetics. Of course, I've told you over the years they've been asking a lot of questions, especially short notes from Indian aesthetics. May that be rasa theory, dhvani theory, soda, aujitya, alamkara, and others you need to be familiar. If you look at the second question, you can see Svodha. It's also from Indian aesthetics. So, regarding the first question, you can see this concept which is called aujitya. It's a term from Sanskrit. It refers to the concept of aptness or fitness. It signifies the correctness, appropriateness, and suitability of behavior. You can find the relevant information in your study material. Refer to Unit 5 of Block 1. If you look at the second question, you can see Svodha. It's a concept in Indian grammar. It refers to bursting forth of meaning as language is uttered. Svodha is associated with how the mind orders linguistic units into coherent discourse and meanings. Svodha is seen as the invariant quality of speech, unaffected by individual speaker differences. Dear ones, you can find this concept mentioned as part of Unit 5 of Block 1. Remember, study Indian aesthetics clearly, with clarity. Do you remember another aspect that I mentioned with respect to short questions? This is an important section. Yes, classical criticism. There we come across a lot of key terms and vocab. So, third and fourth questions, if you have a look at it, are from classical criticism. Let's focus our attention towards the third question. A very basic and simple question. I'm very sure that all my learners would attempt this and you'll secure good marks too. Catharsis. Catharsis, from Greek word catharsis, refers to the process of releasing and thereby promoting or providing relief from strong or repressed emotions. It is often associated with the arts, where it signifies the emotional transformation experienced by the audience or reader. I suppose you remember the Oedipus story that we discussed in our sessions. Purgation of emotions, evocation of pity and fear. See, all these are key phrases. Make sure that you write them. If you don't remember, you can find the relevant information as part of Block 2 of your study material. I'm referring to your official study material. The fourth question in this section deals with hamartia. Hamartia, as we know, is a term from Greek tragedy. It refers to the tragic flow or error that leads to a character's downfall. It is often seen as a misstep or a failure to hit the mark, resulting in the tragic fall of the hero. This concept is central to Aristotle's theory of tragedy. So you can find this concept mentioned as part of Block 2 classical criticism, especially with a mention of Aristotle. I suppose you remember how we discussed the tragic flow in detail in our sessions. Yes. So this is a very familiar and easy topic. I suppose you will attempt this question if asked again. Moving on to the last and final question of this particular question paper. Dear ones, let me remind you that this is an optional question. You need not write all the 5 short notes. You just have to attempt any 2. And while you attempt, try to write those 2 questions for which you feel the most amount of confidence. Alright? Prepare some questions in advance, and if you are lucky, you will see those questions. And previous question papers play a crucial role in helping you prepare well in advance for your upcoming TEE. Question 5. Primary and secondary imagination. So we have discussed this aspect in detail. Do you remember the block? primary and secondary imagination? Of course, it's related to the romantic critic Coleridge. So, obviously, block 3, romantic criticism. Dear learners, this question relates to section 3.2 within unit 3 of block 3. It's a very straight question, a simple question. Of course, most of you must be aware of this. Primary imagination and secondary imagination, these are concepts put forth by the romantic critic Coleridge. According to Coleridge, primary imagination is the universal ability to perceive and process sensory information, whereas secondary imagination is distinctive to artists. They actively transform these perceptions into creative expressions, and it requires conscious effort and is capable of creating something new, not just a copy. So this is also something very important. You must have studied this for your BA course as well. You can find the relevant details as part of your study material. Remember, section 3.2 within unit 3 of block 3. Dear learners, if you could approach this particular course code MEG-05 with a very smart attitude, you'll certainly crack this examination. It's because more or less, if you are observant, you can see that some of those questions were repetitions from the previous question papers. So remember to make sure that you consult at least the last 5 years question paper. Last 5 years would mean 5 into 2, 10 question papers. We have exams in June and in December. So that will certainly help you. Moreover, if you can make quick and easy notes, preferably block-wise, mentioning most important critics and their renowned works, to some extent you will be able to recollect everything correctly. Dear learners, let me remind you that your term and examination is soon approaching. It's high time for you to start preparing for your TEE. Have you not heard of the saying, better late than never? Of course, it's never too late to start your preparation. I understand you must be busy with all other aspects in your life, but do remember to invest a considerable amount of time on a daily basis, and with the combination of hard work and smart work, you'll certainly be able to crack the examination. On that note of optimism, let me conclude this session. In this particular session, we discussed the June 2023 TEE question paper with respect to MEG-05. We had a detailed look at the change in question pattern. We also discussed most of the answers. I've also tried to help you locate these questions and answers in your respective study material from IGNOU. I hope this session was useful to you. I wish you good luck. Prepare well. We'll meet again soon with interesting, useful content. Till then, take care and thanks for watching.